Okay, Lisa, are we ready to start? Right, great. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this presentation on the circular economy and talking about developing key partnerships. This is another one of the London Borough of Hounslow Innovate and Grow sessions. This is centrally funded from Her Majesty's Government, so it's working through London Borough of Hounslow, and Branduin are delighted to be able to deliver this session to you through the sponsorship of the council and the funding provided by the government. Really important activity about this Innovate and Grow activity for your business. It's looking at ways of helping you to be better at exploiting some of the opportunities that are out there. A bit about myself. My name's Tony Mulvale. I'm a member of the Association for Project Management. I'm one of the Branduin Business Support specialists in the project management and operational strategy piece. I work for my own company called Planning for the Best. I'm also a lecturer, a senior lecturer at the University of West London in a management consulting topic, and I'm your presenter for today. My contact details are in the presentation, so if you have any questions or thoughts about the circular economy or key partnerships afterwards, feel free to contact me. Lisa Rides is is emceeing this today from the presentation panel perspective, along with my guests from Branduin with Nowza Manik-Shaw and Charlie McClellan. So, agenda today, we talk about the circular economy. There are topics around that in terms of what do we mean by the circular economy, how do we transfer to the circular economy, so what are the steps we should take. There will be an opportunity to do some exercises as well around the case study, and we'll also look at how you go about delivering those key partnerships. So to develop your experience in the circular economy, you need the key partnerships, and by developing those key partnerships, you'll embed yourself into that circular economy and that approach. There'll be some exercises for you. We have the partnership canvas as well that we can help fill out some of those gaps for you. So this will be you working on your business. And also, don't forget, at the end we'll talk a little bit about the Hounslow one-to-one sessions. Charlie and Nowza will be available to answer questions on those, and a few questions and answers at the end if people want. So we should wrap this up by about 11 o'clock this morning. So this is all part of the fit to bid and the sales enablement process. So as part of this, Branduin are helping you to engage with procurement, improve your bidding skills, look at ways of enabling your sales and providing tender advice through fit to bid. And this all fits into the business model canvas and how we can help you become better and faster at delivering the services in the circular economy. In the supply chain, it's about rethinking how supply chains work. So we're moving away from the throwaway and getting into the situation where we want to be greener in our economy. We want to focus on economic activities that bring prosperity through reuse and recycling. This will enhance well-being as well, so there's less waste, less pollution, and also from a personal perspective, we're looking at how can we be fitter and healthier and greener. And this transition into the circular economy is about what's your strategy to achieve that. So we've got recycling, production, and usage in the circular economy, and it's about generating economic growth through that circular process of reusing and repurposing materials. And it's good for business because businesses are using less material to start with, then we're still growing, but the cost to us can be reduced as a consequence of that as well. So in our traditional model, we would have a very much a linear product flow, and this comes from the board of innovation, where we would take something from the raw materials, so dig a hole in the ground, take out some metal, turn it into a battery. The battery gets used, and at the end of its life, the battery just went into the waste, into the skip or whatever the landfill was. Now we're saying, well, actually, the materials in that battery can be reused. So those scarce resources, we need to think about how can we take those resources and repurpose and reuse them, and extend the life cycle of these products. So we're trying to remove materials that end up as waste in landfill and look at ways to repurpose and reshape them, and make use of those resources that are scarcer for us. So in our circular economy, there are many paths that we can take. So we're still using raw materials, but we're using fewer of those raw materials, and we're producing waste. But along the way, we're looking at how can we use those materials that come out of the end of their life. Is it going to be reuse and repair? So it could be, classic example is a pallet, where the pallet is broken and there are pieces that have fallen off it. We can take some of those broken pieces and reuse them to create a whole new pallet with the bits added onto it. We can look at repairing it as well. So we've taken the bits, repaired the pallet, and now we recycle that back and reuse it. We look at batteries and the contents of a battery, nickel, cadmium, the lead and acids that go into that. We can recycle those and send them back into the return process, where we can feed them back to a recycler, who can then put them into the machinery to come back as something new, as a new battery. So we're taking less out of the environment. Same with metal, same with electrics. A lot of the electricals we have copper in them, so we can take the electrics that we've finished with, power cables, computers, things like that, and they can be stripped back to reuse and recycle those core parts of them. An electric cable with copper in it can be reused repeatedly because the copper is still good. It's just about making sure we get it into the right new shape so that we can use it again. And so when we're looking at this, ultimately we will still have waste, but by using this recycle, repair, return, reuse activity, we're going to reduce the total amount of waste we have, and it's going to be better for the environment as well, because we're not putting all of this product into landfill. We're only putting into landfill what needs to go there. And if you look at reusing, composting and activities like this, you're taking food waste and recycling it and using it in a different way, and that helps with gardening and with other ways of taking that food waste and turning it into something that's used in the garden. So there's lots of different ways to think about this, and you need to think about where are you in that process and what does it mean in terms of the next steps. So that's our circular economy, and what we're looking overall is limiting what we take and limiting the waste we create, and then we start to create value for everybody through the green boxes, where we're moving the outcomes and the outputs and pushing them back into the upstream processes to reuse, recycle, repair and return. So that's the first part of that one. And then when we're looking at this, we're talking about, well, how do we do the value transfer and exchange, and what do we mean by that? So we saw our model where we have take, make, use and waste, and now we've got return, reuse, recycle, repair in there. And how can we take that waste and turn it into something that can go back into that same cycle? So there's sustainable sourcing, so we can look at the waste of a fashion brand and we can think about, well, how can we recycle that? Well, that becomes insulation in the construction business. Bottles with plastic bottles with bottled water, the hydrocarbons in there, you can recycle them. There's a lot of water in those, so you can reuse that material for other purposes as well. Recycled paper for printing, that also gets taken through a process to be able to reform it into new paper that can be then reused. Sometimes you see paper that doesn't feel nice and clean as a new sheet of paper, but it's still serviceable. That's been taken through recycling. We can also use recycled metal for car parts. So again, the metal can be broken down, reformed and turned into something new. There's all those ways of doing it. The other part you might think about is if you are a business and you've got a piece of furniture that you don't need, can it be reused? There are brokers who can take that product as a return, if you like. You send it to them and then they will sell that back on into the market, so they'll pay you for that and then they'll send it back out and sell it to someone else, so you can actually get money for older goods that's still in very good working order that you no longer want to keep. So there's lots of different ways to think about how your outputs can become somebody else's inputs, or even perhaps they can become your inputs as well, so they don't necessarily have to go outside of the firm. You can bring it back inside. Some people have used plastic water bottles as 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 footwear, as flip-flops, for example. So there's lots of different ways of figuring out, how do we get through those circular pieces of information. What are the benefits? So with the circular economy, we're looking at how do we get better at the operational side of things? What's the operational benefit for us? Increasingly, we see more and more environmental legislation being brought into play. We know that we have to comply with the law. We can't just dump stuff in the landfill now. There's all sorts of penalties if we do that as a business. So we want to reduce those costs about sourcing operation, but we want to make sure that we are compliant with the waste regulations. If you are in a business that involves waste, you do need to have a waste license, and there are recent changes in that as well that you need to be aware of. It also helps if it's part of your vision and values. If you are looking at saying our value is to protect the environment, so one of our ways we can protect the environment is to be better at recycling, and that'll help to retain and motivate our talent, because millennials in particular now, as they come into the workforce, are very keen to align their values with your business's values. So that's the operational side of it. From the commercial aspect, customers you can promote the work you're doing with the circular economy. That helps with your loyalty and retention. You can generate new revenue streams. You've got new ways of selling product that you might not have thought about before, and also it gives you an edge with your brand to say we're more than just a seller of retail goods. We actually have a brand position that is environmentally protecting the situation, and we're able to manage and organize our brand to take advantage of that positioning inside the market. And from an environmental perspective, we're looking at, well, how do we reduce our greenhouse emissions? How do we reduce waste? How do we protect biodiversity? And all of that feeds into our messaging and our branding, and we're protecting the environment. It's great. We're reducing waste, so we're not putting so much into landfill, and also we're enabling biodiversity to flourish in areas where perhaps it was not so well looked after. So all of these give us benefits, and we can talk about those in our business models and with our business partners. And once upon a time in the business model canvas, we had the four lenses, which were feasibility and desirability, viability and adaptability. So feasibility is, can we do this? Desirability is, do people want this? Have we got customers, clients who want our product? Viability is, can we make money from this? Does our revenue exceed the cost of doing business? We had a new lens around adaptability. So how do we adapt our business to fit this? And these are important things that we have, because if we don't have customers, we don't have sales. We don't have sales, the product isn't viable. So we want to make sure that we're constantly renewing ourselves, and people talk about future-proofing. The way we future-proof ourselves is to be constantly looking at, is this feasible? How do we make it better? How do we become more efficient or more effective? And sometimes that requires us to change what we're doing. And yes, we need to be viable, because if we don't have income, we go bankrupt. And can we compete? So how do we get to be sustainable, and through that adaptability to achieve a sustainable business? And now we have this fifth lens, and that's about our impact on society and the planet overall. The ESG is the big term that's coming into play now, so it's about environment, social and governance. Organizations are now looking at, how do we become more environmentally friendly? How do we implement social policies that enhance our business? How do we implement good governance? And we're seeing this at the major players. Heathrow is doing a major piece of ESG work. Business parks, landlords, they're all looking at the impact of their ESG policies. And as the larger companies such as Sainsbury's or Aldi or Tesco start to look at this, they're starting to look at the supply chain that people are in and saying, is my supply chain meeting my environmental standards? Is my supply chain meeting my social standards? Is my supply chain delivering on good governance? And so these larger players are starting to look at the smaller players in their supply chain to say, have you got the policies? Have you got the procedures in place that demonstrate your commitment to environment, social and governance? So ESG is a term that you'll be hearing more of, and it ties in with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. There's a lot of overlap between them, and that those Sustainable Development Goals from the UN are being used to underpin the ESG goals. So on top of that, we've got the environmental challenges coming up. We've got net zero, and we're looking at ways of putting the environment at the heart of what you're doing. So when you're starting to think about innovating and growing, what do you need to consider? You need to consider the environment as well. What's our environmental impact? What's our social impact? So when we're delivering social value as well, that is a combination of economic, environmental and social, and we're able to look at what are our social benefits. The business model canvas has evolved to include a social impact and a social and environmental benefit component that starts to take in our commercial customers, our impact on the customers, and looking at how do we add social value. That's becoming more important, and particularly if you're looking to procure work through one of the local boroughs like Hounslow, Ealing, Hillingdon, Harrow, they are all looking now in their procurement policies saying, how do you add social value through what you're doing? So this is becoming more important as well. It's no longer just a tick box on the form. It's looking to say, what do you do and how do you add social value? So there's all sorts of different ways that you can add value. So that can be through repairing, through recycling, through reusing, through the green economy. So you need to be clear about what you do and where you add that value, and how do you make a difference as an organization to the community that you are in. And that community is either your local community, if you're in Hounslow, if you're in Brentford, maybe you're in Spelthorne, maybe you're out by Heathrow. It depends on the location you're in. How do you add value to that local community? So looking at this in summary, is a bit of a brief overview of this, but it's about making those changes that are significant about how we live and produce in that shortened time frame. So we will have different business models. We may need to change the way we work. We want to save costs. We want to reduce waste. But it'll give us access to new markets as well. It'll demonstrate our ability to support a resilient and sustainable supply chain. We may actually generate some new intellectual property out of this, so we might have opportunities to create that IP and develop research and development tax credits from that. The government are driving out new regulations and compliance as well, so as businesses we need to make sure that we are engaging with that regulation and complying with the laws that are coming out. In terms of accessing talent, graduates now, they want to know, do your values align with my values? They're more likely to work with you and be loyal employees who deliver greater results for you if the values align. So you need to know your value propositions align with their values. And also there's a growing recognition that smaller businesses contribute to the local economy, and governments and local authorities are tasked with spending £1 in every 3 on procurement on local business. So there are a lot of opportunities to engage locally, to work with your local council, and having these policies and having an understanding of how you contribute to the circular economy is a critical aspect of being able to tender for those parts of the organization. There's a chat box available. If you have any questions or anything that you want to ask, just drop it into the chat and let us know. It's always useful to see if people have questions at this moment in time. Any thoughts that you want to put in there? And there's also the Read London. This is part of the Build Back Better campaign. There are free workshops for SMEs in London. So if you do want to sign up for that, it's www.readlondon.gov.uk. Encourage you to do that, as it's another opportunity for you to get some free training in this particular area. Just give you a moment if you want to grab a copy of that link, or go and have a look at it. Collaborating in partnerships, it's about who are you working with. And the fastest land animal in the world, the cheetah, we know that it can accelerate to high speeds, 80 kilometers an hour, but it requires a lot of energy, and the success rate is quite low. Chasers are short, they're usually 200 to 300 meters. It's, as I said, a lot of energy, and that tires them out. The other issue that we have with cheetahs is that if they have killed something, they can't run away from bigger cats, they can't climb trees, they can't keep their kills safe, and so their success rate is about 50%, which is not great. But if you look at the sustainable partnerships, the African proverb around, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Elephants work in herds. They have a memory about where water holes are, where good food is, about the differing aspects of the land, and they work together for protection. The calves, the young are protected by the adults. There's a way of making sure that everybody's safe and that nobody is left behind. So that's what we're looking at with a sustainable partnership, is one where we're collaborating and working with people together. And even if you are in the same business as people that there are still opportunities to collaborate. It may be that some of the work you do doesn't really fit your model sometimes, and maybe you have another person in the same business who does something slightly different to you, and it might be better to hand over some of those customers and those referrals to them because they get a better service. And that can work reciprocally, where sometimes your competitors can say, this person's better for you than me, or I'm too busy, if you could take on this client, we could work something together to make it a better result. So always think about how to build the sustainable partnerships, as be open and be collaborative with people. And at Branduin, we've spent over a decade building up these partnerships. We've partnered with a number of chambers of commerce. You can see Hertfordshire, Surrey, Hampshire, Sussex. They're some of our key partners in the home counties. In London, we've got Ealing, Hounslow, Brent, Hillingdon, Hammersmith and Fulham. Watford is obviously Hertfordshire and just outside of there. You can see that we've worked with Invest Hounslow and Work Hounslow as well, but it has taken time to build these partnerships up and build these collaborations up. And by investing in the varying activities around the business piece, understanding the client's needs, working with them on activities to deliver benefit for local people, you can see that we've built up this list of contacts, and it's a big list. And the more you work on this, the stronger this list becomes. So that's the kind of message from Branduin, is that it takes time. This isn't something that we did and worked in 6 months. This is a decade's worth of investment, and it's continual investment and continually building those relationships and maintaining those relationships with our client organizations. Right, okay. So, yep, just a reminder, yes, Michael, presentation, there'll be a recording available now, as I said, on the YouTube channel, and you can get a copy of that as well. What we're going to cover in the second half of this presentation is going into the partnership canvas. So this is more detail around our desirability and feasibility part of the canvas. So we're moving into the feasibility part of the canvas. This is about our key relationship, our key partners, our key activities, and what we offer. So this is a value exchange between the two models. So this there'll be some exercises for you to complete here as well. So why partner? Uh, it could be we need to meet customer expectations. We might be engaging with customers in varying ways to deliver these specific solutions. We could be looking to keep ahead of the competition. A couple of organizations can come together to produce a slightly different service that keeps them in front of the organization. It could be an organization that is good at sales training can partner with an organization that's good with operational training. Together you cover the end-to-end training model for a business. That's one way of doing that. We can also look at cost optimization. We might be able to share resources. We get economies of scale because we're reusing some of the foundation material that we have. We can reduce risk. We can broaden our scope, and uncertainty is reduced as a consequence. And we can also look at acquiring a different set of resources and activities as well. So these are all different things to think about when we're partnering, and it could be about marketing, it could be about supply chain, it could be integration, technology, financial. So there are lots of different aspects to think about with this as well. So what we want to look at here is how do you go about adapting your business model and developing your key partnerships. The value that you have and the value that you create and want can be transferred to other businesses that you work with, and you reciprocate that through the model. So the first step to take are, who are our key partners and who are our key suppliers? What do we know about them? And by that I mean, what are the resources that we're gaining through that, working with those partners, the acquisition there, and what are the key activities that our partners perform for us? That could be, the delivery of our goods. We could have somebody who, if we're in a physical shop, we have somebody who actually does the delivery for us because we don't have a logistics network to manage that delivery. So we've got a third party who works with us to make sure that we get our goods delivered on time to our clients. So thinking about this, there's in the chat facility, if you could just pop in there 3 successful strategic partnerships. So think about your current business model, think about your partners, and think about who are these people and where are they. And I'll give you a couple of minutes to just pop that in the chat. Yusuf has said, my accountant in Calendly. Yep, very good, Yusuf. If we're building up a business, we might have outsourced some of our financials to the accountant, so we rely on them to do VAT returns, to do our year-end corporate returns. Maybe they do your personal tax for you as well. They're all really important aspects of your business that you need somebody to manage, and by working with a key partner such as your accountant, they can keep all of that work on track for you. You could bring it in-house, but then you'd have to do it all yourself, and that could be quite exciting. Calendly is a great resource, particularly if your business involves one-to-one meetings with clients and sales leads, that sort of activity. I use Calendly a lot just to get people to say, find a time that works for you, book it in, and then we reduce the amount of time we need to email things backwards and forwards to just try and figure out who can actually do what time and when. And WebEx, yep, WebEx is very useful as well. It's a good way of holding those one-to-one conversations and working with your clients. Thanks, Yusuf. Balubai, supply chain, technology, financial. Okay, so what example do you have in the supply chain? Do you have anything particular there? And then Michael's come up with Chargebox and Teradoc as his suppliers, customer partnerships with a manufacturing client, and then social media engagement partners to get the right messaging to market. Yep, thanks, Michael. And social media, yes, if you're not comfortable with that, or you don't have the time or the sort of energy to focus on doing social media, outsourcing that to somebody, saying these are my values, this is my brand, this is what I do. Engaging with them can generate a lot more of a return for you than you trying to spend 20 hours a week doing social media. Again, it's the right partner for the right activity. Thanks, Michael. So I've got a few answers in there. For those of you who haven't dropped your answers in, just jot down on your piece of paper, who those strategic partnerships could be with. They could be with businesses, they could be with social media agencies, they could be your web designer, it could be a digital agency that's building your um, yep, local charity. So yeah, thanks Charlie for that. So for Yusuf, your social value, maybe help a local charity have safe IT. Donating some of your time to a local charity is a great way of adding social value. It might be a couple of hours a month that you do with that can help them with their technology. And yeah, so our partners, these are the people we work with. Our second exercise is to think about strategic partner for or supplier for your business. So which of these partnerships are critical to your business? Who are our critical suppliers? Which of our suppliers and partners are sourcing our key resources? And what type of partnerships would suit our needs? Perfect, Youssef. Yep, that's social value, social engineering club, 11 to 15-year-olds with cybersecurity and privacy. Yeah, that's a great way of adding value, and that's something that you can talk about as part of your business story as well. You can put that on your website and just say, part of our social value is this activity which we do as part of our community engagement. So with our second exercise, it's about looking at who are these suppliers, what sort of partnership would suit our needs, and sometimes that's thinking about, well, what is it that we want to achieve as an outcome. If our outcome is to have a better social media presence, then maybe it is about engaging with a social media company. But if we're not sure about the brand and what we represent, maybe we need to have a step before that, which is to do some branding work with a partner who can help us develop our brand and consider, how do we present ourselves more effectively. And when we're looking at these key partners, and wonders, where do they fit into our interaction with the customer journey? Are they helping us at the start build awareness, build consideration for our products? Are they helping us in the middle when we're delivering and the clients are using our products? Or are these tools that we're using and activities and partners that we're looking for afterwards about retention and referral? So it may be that in a technology firm, part of your retention and referral could be after sales support for your technology product, and you might partner with a third party organization that provides you with that technology support as part of that ongoing post implementation support activity. That's the customer maintenance piece, because you might not want to have the full set of skills on board to do that. So it depends on how you want to structure it in your own partnerships. So a third exercise is to think about what assets do we seek to leverage from a partner. So what are they willing to offer us? As I said, it could be resources, it could be they have access to people with particular skills that we don't have, and we'd like to use those resources. In terms of people, it might be materials that they have. So in our pallet example, we might be buying and moving those pallets around. So we might be looking at ways of gaining partners who are able to help us source some of those materials that we need in order to fill our customer orders on the other side. It could be if we are in the business of education, or if we are looking at sort of community training. Some of our partners may be maybe academic staff, they may be local colleges or they could be private colleges who have certain skills and certain access to those skills that can do the teaching. So we need to think about who are these people and what value do they have. In the Calendly piece, that's a digital solution. So we're looking at implementing digital solutions using third-party technology tools. For our social media, we're looking at someone who can develop a marketing plan for us and deliver our ongoing social media engagement over the period. So what is our partner willing to offer us? That's the question we want to answer here. I'll give you a couple of minutes to do that. You can pop the answers in the chat. Thanks, Michael. So it's about service collaboration and creativity. Creativity is an interesting one, but that may be well about engaging with a creative agency who can do your branding, your social media, who know how to do that. Oftentimes, we can also be stuck on our own internal view, so getting somebody else's creativity to help us is a great way of getting a breakthrough and insight into how we can present our images to the outside world more effectively. Thanks, Michael. And on the flip side of it is, what do we offer to our business partners? So how do we add value to those people? So, who is my partner? How do I add value to them? Am I there to provide a service? So for example, there are a couple of people I know who offer mental health education for primary schools. They have a set of activities and values that they want to instill, the values they want to instill through activities. So they work with schools in order to build up emotional awareness and emotional intelligence in children. And the schools value those activities. They're structured, they're organized, there's an outcome to them. So as a partnership, it works well because the schools don't have to develop the curriculum to do that, nor do they need the expertise. But they're dealing with these companies who have the expertise in that area. So these companies are using their expertise to deliver the value to the schools through the emotional intelligence training. Okay. So think about what leverage you offer your partners in that. And then how do we transfer these resources, and how does that work in a technology space? That can be as simple as somebody writes some code for you, puts it into GitHub, and then you can deploy the code. With the teacher example that I was using, the schools with the emotional intelligence training, that can be actual physical visits to schools. It can be board games, card games, and other resources. So it depends on what those activities are, and then what are those activities and resources we need for that relationship to be successful. So these transfer activities about how we make sure that our partner gets the value that we offer. And some of that, as I said, if it's about collaboration, it could be about clear about what the outcomes are we want to achieve and working towards that as a partnership with regular catch-ups and updates to say, yep, this is where we're going. It could be through creativity, it could be through our values as an organization. Says these are our values, this is what we want to achieve, and that enables us to get that information from them. And then our final, another exercise rather, is around what's the result of that value transfer between the partners. So what are the expected outcomes? What's our return on investment? So how are you going to measure this? That's the issue that we have at the moment. Is like, how do we know that we've made a success with this? So a quick thing to think about there might be, with our emotional intelligence piece, it's about the fact that the schools have invested in us. We have a certain number of customers who have signed contracts with us to take on this particular activity. We also might look at our retention rate and our churn rate and our new acquisition rate and see how we are growing. We also might look at engagement on social media. So there are different ways of measuring that. And it could also come down to just measuring the bottom line. So we've spent, X amount, £20,000 maybe, on research and development to build up the materials, and in the last year we've made £50,000 of sales. So we can start to measure some of that in terms of actuals versus the expenditure. So have a think about how are you going to measure this? What's the outcome you want, and how can you measure that outcome to say this is the right result for us? I'll give you a minute to think about that one. Any thoughts? Just pop them into the chat. Any questions you have? The next piece we're talking about is the partnership agreements. They can be very simple to very complex. It's going to be driven by your needs, the services, the interaction you have, the way you want to transfer this value. So there are some things to think about in here: is who approves this? Is it a formal written agreement? Usually good to have something that's structured, that says this is what we've agreed we're going to do, this is what we expect to see, this is when we expect to see it. By having that in there, it cuts down on the chances of a misunderstanding occurring as a result of what's been written down. You could also talk about the terms of agreement. Are we doing profit sharing? How are we going to bill? When are we going to bill? What are we looking at across the life of this contract? Is it going to be for a fixed period of time? Usually it would be good to have something that says, okay, we're going to work together for 2 to 3 years, and we might want to renew that over a period of time. Quality is always important. What do we mean by quality? We need to define what quality looks like. Is it, the number of sessions that we hold where the rating of the session is over a 4-star rating averaged out across all of the attendees? Is it going to be, if we're building materials, if we're producing something that's physical, it can be about the size, the dimensions, and the number of returns that we have. Maybe we don't want to have more than one return in 100 or something like that, and needs to have some sort of signature says this is how we understand the exercise between us. So when we're looking at the collaboration and the partnerships, there's a lot in the supply chain. There's a lot around energy and shared operations infrastructure material. You can look at the boardofinnovation.com in a circular economy piece that will take this and explain it in a lot more detail. But our supply chains are complicated. There are lots of different aspects of the supply chain we need to look at. Our distribution channels are one thing, the facilities we have, the waste, the emissions. How do we measure all of those, and how do we make sure that we are using those efficiently and effectively and in an environmentally sustainable way? Yep. Let me see if I can copy that link. So Bubba, you've got a question about difficult to create partnership agreements, how to go about it. Um, some organisations, such as the Federation of Small Business, IPSI, which is the Independent Professional and Self-Employed Organisation, they have model documentation that you can use to create a, um, a kind of model agreement, and they're normally laid out in a particular way in terms of like the structure of the organization, we the client, you the supplier, the partner, etc. It's always good to get something like that that's a model agreement, but it's also useful as part of the negotiations with your client, or with your partner rather, is to say, we need to have an agreement in place and I have some model terms here, so it would be good to, or not model terms, but I have some terms here that I normally work with. It'd be good to go through this and understand how we're working together and make sure that we're both clear about the terms and conditions of this. It's always important, I think, in the negotiations to have that conversation with your potential partner before the partnership agreement is fully settled, because if you leave it till after the process has started, then you can find yourself in hot water if something goes wrong. So I always include it in my negotiation process up front. We need to have an agreement in place. Here are the terms and conditions associated with that agreement, and we'll have had the conversations and filled them in. Does that make sense to you, Balabai? Okay, and Nowza says, yeah, if you pick this up in a one-to-one with Charlie as well. And so we have closed and open innovation as well. We have internal ideas and external and collaborative ideas. And again, what is shown in the way that people work together and organizations work together for working internally and focused internally inside our corporate boundaries, we tend to focus on what we have as our existing market, and we tend to focus on what we know. When we work through the open innovation with new markets, new collaborators, alternate markets, it helps to expand our range of thinking and generates ideas that make a difference to us in terms of the way we focus on our business, on our partnerships, and how do we sort of bring in some of those ideas to make them better. And this is often why organizations will use a consultancy, for example, is to bring them in and just test some of these ideas out with the market. Sometimes your collaborators could be other people that might fit with your product, and they could be in another industry or another sector, but there's synergies there that you can bring together. So expanding your thinking can help to create new ideas and find a new fit for your product in your collaboration. Our case study, we were talking a little bit about pallets before, but it's buying and supplying recycled pallets. So pallets are reusable. There's a high demand for them at the moment. Changes in Brexit mean that the UK has a different number of pallets available, so it's a commodity that everybody wants. So by going and finding providers of pallets, we can bring them in and we can resell them. We can buy them in bulk from these people. We can clear them out from other people's yards where they've been delivered there, and they're kind of sat there waiting to go somewhere. They can be recycled and repaired. And also, you know, a niche that has opened up for Ruth and Ian is DIY projects where you can use pallets to create pieces of furniture. So at the end of their life, they've turned into a piece of furniture and they're still available for a piece of time. So it's a different way of getting to the same point, but with a different use of the material. So that's an example of a circular economy where these pallets are constantly in circulation, and sometimes customers can be suppliers, and customers can also be buyers, depending on the amount that's needed and direction that things are moving in. So in summary, with our key partners and looking at the process, it's about identifying our business challenge. So what do we want to achieve? What does it look like? What's our vision? What's our outcome that we want from this activity? We'll go away and do the market research. Who are the people that are out there that could help us with this? Who are the people that are in these particular sectors that we could work with? Why would we want to partner with them? Yes, Charlie, the broken pallets can be sold as kindling as well. That's another good use of that. and we've got the partnership canvas as well. So we build up our partnership canvas, say who are these potential partners, what do they offer us through the research, why would we partner with them, and then how do we partner with them by completing the canvas, shortlisting them, having some exploratory conversations with them to see are they the right partner for us. On paper they might look okay, but we need to meet with them and understand, can we work with them, do they work with us, is it a good partnership. We might prototype things. So prototype is the first example of something. We might build an initial design and say, yeah, we can do this, and we continue to test and experiment and refine and launch. So that's the process that we go through with this. It's a fairly organized and step-by-step sort of activity, and always we're asking about who are our key partners, who are our key suppliers, what are those key resources that we're getting from the partners, and what are our key activities that what are the key activities that our partners are performing for us. So we want to keep those questions in mind as we go along, and that will give us a completed partnership canvas as we develop our business, and we'll look at this and we'll revisit it over time as well, because it may be good for 6 months, 12 months, but as part of our business management we want to make sure it stays relevant and valid for us throughout the life cycle of our partnership. Some action plans. So for those of you who've been looking at this, let's have a look at some of your actions. Note them down. It's for you to say, this is what I'm going to do and this is what I'm committing to deliver. So have a think about your top 3 actions. What are you going to do with your partners? How are you going to go about defining them and identifying them? Do you need to do any more work with them as a result of that? So give you a couple of minutes a minute rather, to think about that. And while you're thinking about that, this is the last of the London Borough of Hounslow's HM government sponsored innovation program. The other 3 sessions have been held previously were about access to markets, business model, and designing products and services. This one's about your circular economy and key partnerships. And there's the opportunity to meet and get an assessment of your bid writing skills, to look at knowledges and skills around best practices. There are the one-to-one confidential advice sessions, as well as the assistance when submitting expressions of interest. What we'd like you to get out of this is a completed business model canvas that's focusing on tendering, and a value proposition that speaks to procurement. So each of you will have in your one-to-ones, you'll have this action plan with the card to complete. So that's an activity you'll meet with your Branduin advisor. And I believe Charlie and the team have been working with you on those activities. So I think that brings us to the conclusion. We're just about on time. If you have an expression of interest to submit, then there's local authority procurement, tier 2, tier 3 suppliers, larger buyers, construction. You can contact Charlie about that. His details are here in the slide. And as we said before, this will all be available on the YouTube channel. So there's an opportunity now, if you want to ask any questions or pop any questions in the chat, then please do, and we've got a couple of minutes to answer those questions for you. So thanks everybody for coming along today. It's been good to have you here. And as I said before, this is a HM government sponsored program as part of the innovation activity through the London Borough of Hounslow. Branduin delivering this on behalf of the borough. So it's been our pleasure to have you here today and to
Tony, can you
listen to you.
mention the survey, please?
Yep, I will do, Nowza. So there's also a survey that you'll receive after this from our Branduin team. It'd be really helpful for you to fill that in. It should only take you a couple of minutes to fill that in and send it back. It's on behalf of the borough, and it enables us to work with the borough to improve and look at ways of working with the borough in future to on these sorts of services. Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Charlie. So yeah, any questions? Anybody? You can pop them in the chat. Happy to take questions, or you can contact Branduin after this, or Charlie as the lead for this. Thanks, Michael. We'll see you again soon.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Tony. And thank you, Lisa, for hosting as usual. And see you all soon again. Okay. Many thanks.
Thanks, Nowza. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Lisa. Have a great day.